This is an update of a video I posted a year ago about how I try to make New York-style pizza in a home kitchen.
This is a video showing my attempt to make a New York-style pizza in a home kitchen.
Yes, I normally make my pizza dough in a stand mixer, but I will never cook in a stand mixer on the internet again.
To that, all I have to say is...
2.5 cups of warm water.
2.5 cups or 600 milliliters of warm water.
Then some sugar, a tablespoon. Some people might say that's a lot.
And that's why I don't talk to them anymore. The sugar will not only help the yeast bloom, but also help it brown better.
In goes a teaspoon of active dry yeast.
In goes a teaspoon of active dry yeast.
Give that yeast a chance to rehydrate and to eat some of the sugar in there and to be fruitful and multiply.
While the yeast is carrying out their Old Testament fulfillment, I realized the amount of water in his video doesn't look right. So earlier he said
2.5 cups of warm water.
So mine is exactly 600 milliliters, as you know how precise I am with ingredients. But this does not look like 2.5 cups of water. This is like the moisture level when he tells the story versus the actual level.
This is called blooming, and it is not necessary. The dough will rise regardless. The reason people do this is to check to see if their yeast is still alive. And guess what? This was dead.
My mixture is starting to look like the breeding grounds of thousands of mosquito eggs, so I'm just gonna assume it's full of life.
So let's try this again with fresh yeast. You wait a few minutes, and then here's my favorite part. I am not speeding up this footage. This is real time. I love that.
Well, I'm also not speeding up this footage. But I'm not loving it. Why isn't it doing anything?
Senator, I don't know.
Let's try speeding it up now and see if we can notice anything.
Short version. Not dead.
2 tablespoons or something. Some pros don't use oil in their dough. Again, I think that it helps the crust brown in a home oven.
I guess 2 tablespoons of olive oil. If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you'll remember what I did to it. If you don't, let's revisit this clip. I learned a trick on TikTok to add character to this product.
Now flour. I use bread flour, which has a higher protein content than all-purpose flour.
I'm using whole wheat bread flour because I actually tried to get the right ingredients this time, but I failed to read the whole label.
5 cups by volume. Sure, that's not an accurate way of measuring flour, but this is just a starting point. I'm going to add more flour by feel as we need.
So to balance out the whole wheatness, I'm just gonna do half of this and half all-purpose flour.
I usually just bring that together with a spatula or something, then get my hand in there and knead.
I usually just get in there with my Ligma fork and commit to it.
When it gets so sticky that I can't really work with it, I'll sprinkle on a little bit more flour. As little as possible, though. I really prefer wetter doughs these days.
But is this something you'd prefer? It looks like a really healthy meal for a horse. I guess even though my hands are incapable of getting anything wet, the Ligma fork does. So we'll add a little bit of flour at a time to make it look more like a dough. Any chance you guys think this is ready?
The test to see if it's ready is to see if you can stretch out a patch of it really thin without it tearing. That is not ready yet.
Let's see if we can spread it really thin without tearing. Oh, I guess it's not ready yet.
Alright, I've kneaded this for 10 minutes and now I can stretch it thin without it tearing.
So it's been 45 minutes of constantly adding flour to my mixture. I've added about a full cup and a half. And this is what it looks like now. Kinda looks like something Spider-Man would fight. And after careful consideration, I've decided that this is ready.
This is enough dough for 4 home oven sized pizzas. So I've got 4 containers here, big enough for the dough balls to double in size.
I only have enough dough for 1 pizza for me. So I'm gonna use 1 container to put all of it in.
I'm pouring a little olive oil into each.
Pour a little canola oil into it.
Then what I like to do is use the ball like a paintbrush to oil the inside of the bowls. In the process, the balls themselves get good and covered in oil too.
We'll first transfer the dough into the container. As you can see, the dough is very pliable at this moment. moment, and then we'll use the dough as a paintbrush to get the oil on the sides of the container as well as the dough itself. And you might wonder why my dough is sticking to my hand a lot. That is probably because I used canola oil instead of olive oil.
Cover them up, and then you could either rise them on the table for a couple hours and then bake them, or what I do is throw them straight into the fridge.
I'm just gonna rest it on the countertop for 2 hours because waiting overnight for pizza is basically torture.
A sauce. The New York style pizza that I'm talking about here is a street food. It's cheap. It's generally made with canned sauce products.
That's what I want to hear because my superpower is summoning tomato cans out of nowhere. I only have whole tomatoes in here, so to make it nice and smooth for the sauce, I'm gonna have to crush it myself. I don't have a blender, so I'm gonna use this special technique called cutting the shit out of it. This is how smooth it should look after applying the technique for about 10 minutes.
I do put in a pinch of sugar, some dried oregano, and a lot of olive oil. I love fresh oil in pizza sauce, but you do you.
I'ma do me and add in sugar, salt, oregano, and a lot of black pepper. Ligma fork it till smooth, and I have to say this is the most pleasant sauce making experience I've had in a long time.
Very wet dough, and the cold helps keep it workably stiff.
Well, the cold never helps me keep stiff. It does the opposite actually. As you can see here, my dough is trying to escape its container like how hustlers escape the matrix. I'm gonna work on the dough on top of a silicone mat. I love it because silicone is actually a human's best friend because it can easily turn into useful tools in and out of the kitchen.
Nice job, team.
In case you can't tell, the dough is still a little bit on the wet side, so we're gonna fold it a couple more times and divide it up into 4 even pieces. After we put 3 of them in the fridge, we'll start kneading 1 of them. This process will probably help the gluten develop even more. Gluten sensitivity is just like cryptocurrency. I don't really understand anything, but my friends who have them can't seem to shut up.
Put a plate on there and then some flour on the plate.
Putting a plate on the pizza peel and then some flour on the plate.
Take it out while deflating it as little as possible and then get it coated in flour.
I shake the dough off as carefully as possible and then get it coated in flour.
And yeah, I know how to toss pizzas in the air. I still prefer to just do the gravity stretch method.
You want to grab the side of the dough and keep rotating it while letting gravity pull it down. The gravity method is the best way to shape a pizza. It's heartwarming to see how humanity utilizes Isaac Newton's greatest discovery.
No, it does not give you a perfect circle like centrifugal force does, but guess what? I don't want a perfect circle. I want an oblong.
Well, I want a perfect circle, so I'm gonna do a bunch of these tiny pinches on the edges to try to make it look good, just like how my boss micromanages me. Now we're gonna pour on some sauce and spread it out with the most versatile kitchen tool, the Ligma fork. But you have to remember, this is a pretty thin pizza. Too much sauce is gonna make it a little soggy, so I'm gonna take some of the sauce away.
Sprinkle on a little grated Parmesan under the mozz layer.
Now I'm gonna grate some grana padano on the bottom layer, cause I can't really tell the difference between this and Parmesan anyways.
Part skim low moisture mozz is very easy to find, but the whole milk version tastes a lot better. There is this whole milk low moisture mozz from Walmart. It is not a great cheese, but it's the right style. Beware of this cheese from Polio, which a lot of people like for pizza, but this cheese they sell retail is not what I would call a true low moisture cheese.
In Adam's video, he goes into further detail in explaining the differences in these mozzarella cheeses. To sum it up, the key to making the perfect New York style pizza is to get the type of mozzarella cheese that's the easiest and the most accessible to you.
You need a hot surface to bake on, and I have recently switched from a stone to a steel.
I switched from a good looking pizza stone to a nearly destroyed one.
You want to get your oven as hot as it goes, though. For me, that's 550 Fahrenheit on the convection roast setting.
Mine only goes up to 475, but if it can burn my finger, it can cook a pizza.
Bring it over to the oven, a little shimmy just to make sure it's gonna release, and then shimmy it out onto the steel.
After an hour of heating up this pizza stone, we'll bring our pizza over, shimmy it a little bit, and shimmy onto the stone.
A pizza this thin in an oven this hot cooks really fast, 6 or 7 minutes.
After about 3 minutes, we'll open the oven and flatten out the pizza.
I usually grab it with tongs and pull it straight out onto a cooling rack.
Since my oven's a little lower in temperature, I baked it for 12 minutes. It's looking pretty good now. So I'll pull it out with a pair of tongs onto a cooling rack. My pizza stone gets dirtier every time I use it. Is this supposed to be like that? Let me know in the comments.
For a pizza this size, a good old chef's knife is a perfectly adequate tool, and it's safer. It gives you more control.
Why fly first class to Italy when I have this pizza at home? I think the most obvious problem is that the crust is a little off-colored, probably because my dough was too wet, but the fact that the dough worked is a miracle in itself. I have a feeling that for the first time ever, you guys on Instagram are gonna be proud of me. Adam uses a knife for the most control, but I think the best way to cut a pizza is with a pair of scissors. But before we continue, we're gonna give it a sound check real quick. It doesn't look that brown, but just like my face, it is pretty crusty. When you hold it up like this, it's not dripping any oil, which is a good sign. But the biggest problem of this pizza is the thickness. It's pretty much my personal preference in everything else except for pizza. When you flip it, I guess we can spot another problem of the bottom not being charred enough, but I'm just gonna blame it on the oven temperature. Finally, it's time to taste and rate it 1 through 10.
Damn.
My pizza doesn't even taste as good as the dollar slices of the streets of New York. I think my biggest mistake was that I overshaped it with my finger. I should have just stretched it with the gravity method to get it as thin as possible. I also overloaded the sauce so the dough became even more soggy. Adam's recipe is easy to follow and very applicable in the home kitchen, but my execution today was a 5 out of 10. I'm giving a trigger warning as I'm about to demonstrate my method of eating New York pizza. When you roll it up like this, you get a little bit of crust and toppings with each bite you take. Am I a genius? Let me know in the comments. So far, every pizza attempt on this channel has been an L, so we'll definitely revisit this concept later. In the meantime, I want to do a video where I make and review all of your struggle meals. If you don't know what that is, a struggle meal is just the food you make for yourself when you have nothing to eat at home and you're one step away from having sleep for dinner. An example would be a hot dog on a piece of Wonder Bread. Just send the recipe or a picture to me on Instagram and then I'll make it, try it, and rate it 1 through 10. Alright, thank you.